Hello everyone and welcome back to the Everyday Runner, the official channel of therunningwebsite.com. Today we're going to be talking about injuries, when you should keep running, and when you should probably take a break. So before we jump into it, I just want to add a quick disclaimer. I am not a medical professional, I'm not a doctor, physical therapist, or anything like that. So the advice I'm giving you today is just based off of my 10 plus years of running experience and the injuries I went through. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. So jumping right into it, the first section I want to go over is soreness. So to address this, I'd like to set up a quick situation here. So let's say you just did a really hard workout for the first time, or you added new lifting to your schedule. So for the first time ever, or at least the first time in a while, you deadlifted yesterday. And when you wake up today and go for a run, your hamstrings are extremely sore. Your hamstrings are obviously going to be sore the next day because you just introduced them to a stimulus that they're not used to at all. So the lactic acid is built up and you need a couple easy runs just to get that pumped out of you. Now this is a good time to address something known as delayed onset muscle soreness, or DOMS, and this has gained a lot of popularity in the running community in recent years. And basically this is when the soreness extends, or is even worse, 2 to 3 days after the initial exercise, sometimes even more so than just the day after. And in this instance, I would say you're still fine to keep running, just make sure your body has time to recover and flush out that lactic acid like I was saying earlier. However, let's say after your intense workout or the deadlifting, instead of your hamstrings being sore, your back is really sore. In this instance, you run the risk of having gone too hard in the workout, or you weren't doing it with proper form and you may have actually injured your back. So it's really important whenever you have soreness after exercise that it makes sense that you have soreness with respect to the exercise you were doing. So you really just want to make sure that you're keeping in tune with your body and with the exercises that you've been doing. So in the case of your back hurting after deadlifts, if this pain keeps progressing 2-3 days after and you still have pain after you've slept well and taken proper recovery precautions, I would say at that point you should probably stop running and go see a health professional. The next section I want to go over is coming back from an injury. So this is actually an area where I have a lot of experience, especially recently. I had surgery back in September on my heel for a Haglund's deformity, so since then I've been training and trying to get back into the loop of running. So when you injure yourself and have to go through surgery or rehab, it takes a long time to get back to the original position you were in. For instance, when I go out and run, I still feel a slight discomfort in my heel. Notice how I said discomfort instead of pain. The reason why I use the word discomfort is because it's normal to have some soreness or some discomfort while you're getting back into it. But pain, on the other hand, is something that you don't want. Now, differentiating between pain and discomfort is kind of a subjective thing, and it really just depends on how you feel. But a good way that I've found to judge the pain on my own is I ask myself 2 questions. The first question is, does this hurt the same or worse than before the rehab? And 2, is it getting worse as I increase the activity? So for instance, if I'm out on a run and I just feel some slight discomfort, nowhere near the pain I had before, and it kind of subsides over time, then I know I'm good. Now if I go out and the pain is severe or it gets worse as I exercise, then I know I need to back off and I'm not ready to be doing the exercise that I'm doing at that time. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of discomfort versus pain, and that's definitely something you want to keep an eye out when you're coming back from an injury. Now the third area is sudden pains, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one because it's pretty obvious as to what you're supposed to do. So let's say you're running down the road and you have a shooting pain in your knee, your hip, your ankle, something like that. You definitely want to stop and go see a doctor or something, because clearly you just did something wrong. Especially if you hear some kind of pop or something like that. Don't mess around with that. This section's pretty obvious. Let's move on. Now the 5th section I want to go over is sometimes hard to determine on your own, and that's a change in your running form. So what I'm talking about here is if you've ever been out on a run and you feel like you're kind of a little bit off, or something feels a little tight or weak and you just don't feel like you're running the normal way that you normally do. And like I said, this is sometimes hard to identify by yourself. So if you have a running buddy that runs with you or a teammate that runs with you all the time, go ahead and have them look at you running and see if they notice any differences in your form. Another way you can go about this is setting up a camera on a tripod and then just running past it and reviewing your form, making sure everything looks normal. Now like I said, the body is excellent at compensating for tight or weak spots of our body, but after a while the body can't keep up anymore and things start to break down, and that's when you get injured. Now my biggest piece of advice here is just to stay as in tune with your body as you possibly can. Now if you go out for a couple runs and it just feels a little weird at times, you just feel a little off, but then you feel kind of like you get into the groove of things as you run more miles or later in the week, then you're probably fine. I wouldn't worry about it too much. But if you're constantly feeling like you're just striking the ground oddly, or you just don't feel normal when you're running, I would definitely have someone watch your form or set up a camera and watch yourself, because you may be running differently, and that usually is a sign that you're tight somewhere or weak somewhere, which is definitely going to lead to some injury. So all in all, if you feel normal most of the time and just feel off every now and then, you can probably keep running. But if you constantly feel like something's wrong, I would definitely take a break and reevaluate where you're at. The next section I have to go over is recurring injuries, and I think this is probably the most important section of them all. If you feel pain in an area of your body that's been injured before, you want to take that very seriously. We as runners want to get back to running as quickly as we can, but oftentimes when we do that, we do it too quickly, adding too much intensity too soon, and this can often lead to re-injury of the injuries we just got over. It takes time for our body to be nursed back to health, and most of the time it takes way longer than any of us want it to. But my biggest advice here, guys, is definitely listen to your body. Do not ignore it. That's what I did, and I ended up having to get surgery because I ignored it for so long. Now, my case is definitely the extreme case. If you listen to your body early enough, you're probably gonna be fine, but that's just my biggest piece of advice. Don't ignore it. So going back to whether or not you should be running when you have recurring pain, if the pain keeps popping up and it's not going away and you're taking care of yourself, definitely go see some help from a medical professional or someone, because that's a road you definitely don't wanna go down after you've just gotten over it. Now, if it pops up every once in a while and it subsides as you get warmed up, and after a couple weeks you're good to go, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. But my biggest piece of advice would again be to listen to your body and also keep up on your stretching and strengthening exercises, because I've found in my experience when those start to slip, my running starts to slip, and that's when the injuries start coming back. Now, there is another thing I wanted to talk about in this section, and that's the idea of phantom pain. Phantom pain is typically a medical term used to describe when someone has pain in a limb that's no longer there, so like in an amputee situation. But it can be applied to running in the sense that sometimes people feel pain from an injury that's no longer there. So sometimes you may just be so stressed in your mind that you think that you're feeling pain, but you're really not. But this would usually be when you're really early on getting back into it. And you just, again, got to be kind of honest with yourself, and if it keeps coming back, it's probably not phantom pain. So just be honest with yourself, keep notes in your journals, and again, just listen to what your body has to tell you. I know that sounds incredibly simple, just to listen to your body, but we as runners are very stubborn people, and we want to get out there and run, and it's really tough when we can't. So take it from me, you don't want to have surgery. All right guys, so that's all the sections I wanted to cover. All in all, the biggest takeaway from this is definitely listen to your body. If you can, whether it's on Strava or in a journal or notebook, wherever you log your runs, just write down a sentence or two every day talking about how you felt on the run, cardiovascularly, physically, all of these things. So that way you have something to look back on and reference whenever things do go south. Then you're not just guessing as to when things went wrong. Like I said, guys, I am definitely not a medical professional. This is just based on my experience, but I hope it's been helpful for you guys. And if you have any questions, go ahead and leave them down in the comments, or if you have ways of your own to identify whether or not you should be running, go ahead and leave those in the comments as well. Now, if you would like to receive some thoughts from someone who's definitely more of a medical professional than I am, go check out an article that's going live tomorrow at 7 a.m. on therunningwebsite.com. The article was written by one of our co-founders, Drew Tebow, who's currently in medical school and is surrounded by medical professionals all the time. He's going to be diving into this topic in more detail in the article on that website, so definitely check it out if you want to learn more. Thank you guys for tuning in. It means a lot to us that you take the time out of your day to watch our videos. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was helpful. And as always, from one everyday runner to another, we'll see you next time.